By the time I got home that night, the rain had soaked through my coat. It was one of those cold Los Angeles storms that turned every streetlight into a blur and every sidewalk into black glass. My shoes were wet. My hair was stuck to my face. My hands were stiff from gripping the steering wheel all the way home. All I wanted was to get inside, change out of my work clothes, and stand under a hot shower until the day came off my skin. But the second I stepped onto the porch, I knew something was wrong. The kitchen lights were on. Not the small lamp by the entryway. Not the hallway light Mark sometimes left on when he remembered I existed. The kitchen lights were on. Bright. Warm. Almost cheerful. And through the front window, I heard laughter. A woman's laughter. I stood there, with my key halfway in the lock, rain sliding down the back of my neck, and for one stupid second, my mind tried to protect me. Maybe it was the television. Maybe Mark had people over. Maybe his mother had stopped by. Maybe there was some normal explanation for why another woman was laughing in my kitchen at 11:42 on a Thursday night. Then I opened the door, and I saw her. Brianna Cole was standing barefoot in my kitchen, wearing my cream-colored robe, the one my sister had bought me for Christmas. She leaned against the marble island, like she owned it, holding my favorite blue mug in both hands. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. Glossy. Perfect. Her makeup was still done, even at nearly midnight. She looked comfortable. Settled. Like she had been there for hours. Mark stood behind her, one hand resting low on her waist. My husband, in our kitchen, with his mistress. For a moment, nobody said anything. The rain hammered the roof behind me. Water dripped from my coat onto the hardwood floor. My breath came out shallow and thin. Brianna looked me up and down. Then she smiled. Not shocked. Not guilty. Satisfied. "Oh," she said, lifting my mug to her mouth. "You're home. You're home." As if I were the interruption. As if I had walked into her life. I looked at Mark. He did not step away from her. He did not apologize. He did not even look embarrassed. He just sighed, like I had ruined his night by existing. "Claire?" he said. "Don't start." That was what broke something in me. Not the robe. Not the mug. Not even his hand on her waist. It was the boredom in his voice. Like my pain was a chore he had already decided not to deal with. I shut the door behind me. "Get out," I said to Brianna. She blinked, then let out a soft laugh. Mark's jaw tightened. "Claire," he warned. I kept my eyes on her. "Take off my robe, put down my mug, and get out of my house." Brianna tilted her head, pretending to be confused. "Your house?" She looked over her shoulder at Mark, then back at me. "That's funny. Mark said you barely live here anymore." My fingers curled at my sides. I had worked 2 shifts that week, because Mark said the company had cash flow problems. I had skipped lunch 3 days in a row to stretch the grocery budget. I had washed his shirts, answered his mother's calls, paid the utility bill from my own checking account, and slept alone, more nights than I wanted to count. And this woman was standing in my kitchen, wearing my robe, telling me I barely lived there. "Brianna," Mark said, but there was no real warning in it. She heard that too. So she kept going. "I don't want to be rude," she said, in a voice built entirely out of rudeness. "But maybe you should talk to your husband before making a scene. He invited me." I looked at Mark again. "Is that true?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "Don't do this right now." "Is that true?" His eyes hardened. "You weren't supposed to be home this early." There it was. Not denial. Not shame. Just irritation that his schedule had failed him. I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to cry in front of her. "Tell her to leave," I said. Mark laughed once under his breath. A sharp, ugly sound. You don't give orders in this house. Brianna lowered the mug, watching us, like she had paid for a front row seat. I took one step toward the island. I am your wife. Mark's face changed. It was small, barely noticeable. But I had lived with that man long enough to know the exact second his pride turned into rage. His shoulders squared. His mouth flattened. His eyes went cold. And maybe that's the problem, he said. Brianna looked down, hiding a smile. That tiny smile, it did more damage than any insult could have. I looked at her and said, "You can stop pretending. I know about the hotel charges. I know about the consulting invoices. I know about the card." The smile disappeared. For the first time that night. Brianna looked uncertain. Mark stepped forward. "What did you just say?" I should have stopped. A smarter woman might have stopped. But I was wet, exhausted, humiliated, and so tired of being treated like a ghost in my own marriage. I said I know. I told him. And if she doesn't leave this house, in the next 30 seconds, I'm calling Nora. That name landed harder than I expected. Mark's eyes narrowed. "Nora?" Brianna turned to him. "Who's Nora?" I did not answer her. Mark moved closer, his voice dropping. "What have you been doing?" "Claire?" It was almost funny. He had another woman in my robe. He had spent months lying to my face. He had used company money to buy her dinners, clothes, and weekends at hotels. But somehow, I was the one being interrogated. "I've been paying attention," I said. The kitchen went still. Outside, thunder cracked hard enough to shake the window. Mark stared at me, as if he were seeing a stranger. Then he smiled. Not because he was amused, because he had decided I needed to be reminded who he thought I was. "You think a little attorney scares me?" he said. "You think because you found a few receipts? You understand anything?" Brianna quietly set the mug down. "Smart girl." She could feel the room changing. Mark pointed toward the front door. "You need to walk back outside. Get in your car. And cool off." "No." His head tilted. "What did you say?" I said no. I looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm done cooling off. I'm done pretending. And I'm done letting you bring your affair into my house and asking me to make it comfortable." His hand came up so fast, I barely saw it. The slap cracked across my face. My head snapped to the side. Pain burst hot across my cheek. I stumbled backward and hit the corner of the dining table, hard enough to knock the breath out of my lungs. For a second, I could not hear anything except a high ringing in my ears. Brianna gasped. A small, theatrical sound. "Mark," she whispered. But she did not move toward me. She did not help me. She just stood there in my robe, with both hands near her mouth, watching my husband become exactly who he had always been, underneath the charm. I touched my cheek. My fingers came away, with a tiny smear of blood from where my lip had split. Mark was breathing hard. For half a second, I saw panic in his eyes. Not regret. Panic. Because he knew. He knew he had crossed a line he could not uncross. Then his pride rushed in to save him from accountability. "Look what you made me do," he said. I laughed. I could not help it. It came out broken and small, but it was still a laugh. That made him angrier. He grabbed my arm. "Get out." I tried to pull away. "Let go of me." He dragged me toward the front door. Brianna said his name again. Weaker this time. Not because she cared about me. Because this was no longer glamorous. This was evidence. Mark shoved the door open. Cold wind and rain rushed into the house. "Mark." "Stop," I said. But he did not stop. He pushed me onto the porch so hard, I slipped on the wet step and fell to my knees. Pain shot through my palms. Rain hit my face. My hair. My coat. My split lip. Behind me, Mark stood in the doorway. Warm light pouring around him. He looked down at me, like I was something he had thrown away. Stay out there, he said, until you remember who pays for this house. Then he slammed the door. The lock clicked. For a long moment, I stayed exactly where I was, on my knees, in the rain, with my cheek burning and my hands pressed against the cold, wet porch boards. Inside, I heard Brianna's voice. I could not make out the words. Then Mark said something. Then they both went quiet. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they were angry. Maybe they thought I was going to bang on the door and beg to be let back in. I did not. I stood up slowly. My whole body was shaking, but not from the cold. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen was wet, so I wiped it against my sleeve. 1 missed call from Maya, 3 unread messages from Nora Reyes, and 1 email draft I had written 3 weeks earlier. I opened it. The subject line looked almost calm. Ellison file release. If he touches me. My thumb hovered over the screen. For months, Nora had told me not to threaten him. Document. Copy. Back up. Wait until I was safe. Wait until he gave us something clean enough that nobody could explain it away. My cheek throbbed. My lip bled. Behind the locked door, my husband and his mistress were standing in the warmth of the house I had helped save from foreclosure twice. I looked at the recipients. Nora Reyes. My divorce attorney. Maya Whitman. My sister. Detective Aaron Mills. The domestic violence contact Nora had given me, in case Mark ever crossed the line. Daniel Price. The forensic accountant, who had already seen enough to tell me one thing clearly. Claire, this is bigger than an affair. Attached to the email was a folder. Bank statements. Invoices. Screenshots. Voicemails. Photos. Loan documents. 1 signature that looked like mine, but wasn't. And a timeline that began long before Brianna ever wore my robe. I looked once more at the locked door. Then I pressed send. The little progress circle spun. 1 second. 2. 3. So, that was it. No thunderclap. No miracle. Just a quiet word. On a wet phone screen. Sont. Mark thought he had thrown me out with nothing. He had no idea. I had just stopped protecting him. 3 years earlier, Mark Ellison had made me feel chosen. That was the part I hated remembering. Because when people hear how a marriage ends, they want to believe the beginning was rotten. 2. They want the villain to walk in wearing a warning label. They want the first red flag to be so loud that any reasonable woman would have run. But Mark was not loud at first. He was warm. He was charming, in that easy, polished way that made waiters like him, children smile at him, and older women call him such a gentleman. When we met, I was working as a paralegal for a small family law firm in Pasadena. I was good at details, good at timelines, good at reading the fine print no one else wanted to read. Mark loved that about me. At least, he said he did. He would sit across from me at dinner and ask about my cases, my clients, the little procedural things most people found boring. You're scary smart, he told me once, smiling over a glass of wine. If you ever looked at my family's contracts, you'd probably save us from ourselves. I laughed then. I thought he was flirting. I did not realize he was interviewing me. After we got married, he started bringing home files from Ellison Development. Small things at first. Vendor agreements. Permis d'application. Invoices that needed organizing. His father, Richard Ellison, ran the company like an old-school kingdom. Mark was the prince, waiting for the crown. They bought tired properties, renovated them, flipped some, rented others, and survived on investor confidence, bank credit, and city relationships. Nobody ever put in writing. At first, helping felt like being part of something. Mark would spread papers across our dining table and kiss the top of my head. "I don't trust anyone with this stuff. The way I trust you," he would say. So I helped. I built spreadsheets. I cleaned up contract folders. I flagged missing signatures. I organized invoices by vendor, project, and date. I thought I was supporting my husband. I did not understand yet that every file he brought home would matter later. The first year was almost good. Not perfect, but good enough that I could ignore the small things. Mark did not like when I worked late. He said the firm took advantage of me. Then he did not like one of the male attorneys texting me about cases after hours. He said it was disrespectful. Then he started saying my job was making me anxious, that I was bringing other people's divorces into our marriage, that I would be happier if I stepped back. He did not demand. That came later. At first, he worried. He suggested. He softened the cage before he closed it. By our second anniversary, I had left the law firm and taken a part-time front desk job at a dental office, 3 days a week. Mark said it was temporary, just until Dad and I get the new project stable. He told me, then you can do whatever you want. But stable never came. There was always another project, another cash flow issue, another reason I needed to help with paperwork, just for a few weeks. And the more I helped, the less he wanted me asking questions. The first invoice that made me pause was from B. Cole Consulting. $4,000. Brand development. No project name. No deliverables attached. I remember staring at it on my laptop while Mark was in the shower. Ellison Development did not have a brand department. They barely had a working website. When I asked him about it later, he did not even look up from his phone. "Marketing thing," he said. "What marketing thing?" He sighed. "Claire. Not every line item needs a deposition." I let it go. That was one of my mistakes. Then came another invoice. Then another. $2,500. $6,000. $3,000. Always B. Cole Consulting. Always vague. Around the same time, charges started appearing. On the corporate card Mark used. A boutique hotel in Santa Monica. A steakhouse in West Hollywood. A spa in Beverly Hills. A women's clothing store I had never heard of until I searched it and saw one dress cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. When I asked about those, Mark got angry. Not defensive. Angry. "You have got to stop acting like an auditor," he said. "It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing to who?" "To me," he snapped. "To my father? To everyone who has to deal with this obsessive little habit of yours." That night, he slept in the guest room. The next morning, he brought me coffee and kissed my forehead like nothing had happened. I wanted to believe the coffee more than the anger. So I did. Brianna came into focus slowly. First as a name, then as a face, then as a pattern. A tagged photo from a restaurant Mark claimed he had gone to with investors. A reflection in a hotel lobby mirror, on someone else's Instagram story. A bracelet on her wrist that matched a charge I had seen 2 days earlier. Then one afternoon, a message popped up on Mark's iPad while he was outside, taking a call with his father. "Brianna, did you tell her about me yet? Or is your little housekeeper still playing wife?" I stared at those words until they blurred. Little housekeeper. Playing wife. The woman was not just sleeping with my husband. She was laughing at me. From inside my own life. I took a picture of the screen. My hands shook so badly. The first one came out blurry. So I took another. That was the first screenshot. In the folder. The second was a bank transfer. The third was a text from Mark. Stop digging unless you want to find something you can't handle. By then, I had started sleeping, with my phone under my pillow. I had started keeping copies of documents in a cloud drive Mark did not know about. I had started smiling at dinner while memorizing dates. But the thing that truly scared me was not Brianna. It was my signature. I found it on a loan modification document for an Ellison development credit line. My name, my signature, my supposed consent to use marital assets as additional security. I had never signed it. I sat at the dining table for almost 20 minutes, looking at the page. The shape was close. Too close. Whoever had copied it had practiced. But the C in Claire was wrong. I always pulled the top loop tighter. This one was too wide. That was the moment the affair became smaller than the marriage. Because cheating could break my heart. Forgery could ruin my life. I called Nora Reyes the next morning, from the parking lot of the dental office. Nora had been a senior attorney at the firm where I used to work. She was not warm, in the traditional sense. She wore black suits, carried red pens, and could make grown men reconsider their entire personalities with one look over her glasses. When she picked up, I said, "I think my husband forged my signature." She was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then she said, "Where are you?" "Work." "Are you safe?" That question did something to me. Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Did you misunderstand?" Not, "Why would he do that?" "Are you safe?" I did not answer right away. And that was answer enough. Nora told me to come to her office. On my lunch break, I brought the document. Then I brought the invoices. Then the screenshots. Then the card statements. By the time Nora had gone through the first stack, her face had gone very still. "Claire," she said, "this is not just adultery." "I know." "No," she said. "I need you to hear me. This is not just a bad husband with a girlfriend. This may be fraud. It may involve marital assets. And if your name is on documents you did not sign, you need to protect yourself before he decides. You are useful as a shield." I felt cold, even though her office was warm. "What do I do?" Nora leaned forward. "You do not confront him with everything you know. You do not threaten him. You do not tell him you have a lawyer. You document. You copy. You back up. You build a timeline. And if he ever puts his hands on you, you call me before you call him." I almost laughed. Mark had never hit me then. Not exactly. He had grabbed my wrist too hard. Blocked doorways. Thrown a glass against the wall. Close enough that pieces landed in my hair. Driven too fast, while screaming at me. But he had never crossed the line. People like to pretend is the only line that counts. Nora saw my face. "Claire," she said gently, which somehow frightened me more. Violence does not always start with a fist. That was how the folder began. Ellison file. At first, I hated the name. It felt dramatic. Paranoid. Like something a woman created when she had already lost touch with reality. Then Mark started leaving voicemails. The first time I did not answer, because I was with Maya. At a late movie, he called 12 times. The last voicemail was quiet. That was what made it terrifying. "You want to embarrass me?" he said. "You want to act single? Fine. But don't forget, Claire, everything you have is because I allow it." I saved it. Nora had me send it to her. Maya made me promise I would come to her apartment if things got worse. I promised. Then, like too many women do, I stayed. Not because I was stupid. Not because I thought love would magically fix him. I stayed because leaving without proof meant walking into whatever story Mark and Richard wanted to tell about me. And they were already preparing one. That I was unstable. That I was jealous. That I had handled paperwork. That if anything was wrong, maybe poor Mark had simply trusted the wrong wife. So I kept documenting. The hotel receipt, folded into his glove compartment. The photo of Brianna, wearing earrings purchased, on the corporate card. The second loan document, with my name on it. Richard's email to Mark that said, "Move the clear files off-site until the audit window passes." I did not know exactly what clear files meant, but Nora did not like it. Neither did Daniel Price, the forensic accountant she brought in quietly. Daniel was calm, silver-haired, and unsettlingly good at looking at a spreadsheet the way a detective looked at a crime scene. After reviewing the first batch, he called me and said, "Mrs. Listen, I'm going to say this carefully. Your husband's affair is the least interesting thing in these documents." That sentence stayed with me. It stayed with me when Mark came home and asked why I had changed the password on my laptop. It stayed with me when Brianna sent me a message from an unknown number. "You'd be happier if you stopped holding on to things that don't want you." And it stayed with me when I wrote the email draft Nora told me to prepare. Subject: Ellison. File release if he touches me. I wrote it in my car. During my lunch break, I added the recipients. Nora. Maya. Detective Aaron Mills. The domestic violence liaison, Nora said to contact if Mark ever crossed the line. Daniel Price. Then I attached the folder. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to show the pattern. Enough to make deletion impossible. Enough to make sure that if Mark hurt me, the next person he had to answer to would not be me. For 3 weeks, that email sat in my drafts. Every morning, I saw it. Every night. I hoped I would never need it. One more thing sat quietly in the back of my mind, though I did not understand. Is importance yet. The kitchen camera. The previous Christmas, Mark's mother had brought over her anxious little dog and installed a pet camera near our kitchen window so she could check on him while we were out. After the holiday, she took the dog home and forgot the camera. Mark never removed it. He liked using it to check whether deliveries came through the side door. I barely thought about it. Not then. Not until later. Not until the night everything changed. The rain. The robe. The mug. The slap. The locked door. And the word, "Son," glowing on my screen. Maya arrived 12 minutes later. She pulled up to the curb, in her old gray Honda, wearing pajama pants, a sweatshirt, and the kind of expression I had not seen on my sister's face since our mother died. She jumped out before the car was fully straight. "Claire." The second she saw my face, she stopped. Her eyes went wide. Then they filled with tears. She was too angry to let fall. "I'm taking you to the ER," she said. "I don't need." "Yes," she cut in. "You do." I did not argue. Not because I suddenly felt strong. Because I was exhausted from arguing with people who needed my silence. At the hospital, Maya sat beside me while a nurse photographed my cheek, my lip, my palms, and the bruises forming on my arm where Mark had grabbed me. Every flash felt humiliating. Every question felt too bright. But Nora had already called ahead. "Medical documentation matters," she told me through the phone. "I know this is hard. But tonight, we make a record. He cannot bully out of existence." So I answered, "Yes." My husband hit me. "Yes." He pushed me out of the house. Yes. He locked the door. Yes. His girlfriend was present. No. I did not feel safe going home. When Detective Mills arrived, he did not act shocked. That helped. Shock would have made me feel like a spectacle. Instead, he sat down, opened a notebook, and said, "Start from when you arrived at the house." So I did. While I gave my statement, my phone kept lighting up. Mark? 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 Then text. Where the hell did you go? You better not be doing something stupid. Claire? Answer me. Then, if you try to make this ugly, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did with the company books. I showed the message to Nora when she arrived at the hospital, just before dawn. She read it once. Then her mouth tightened. Good, she said. I stared at her. Good? He threatened you in writing, and he referenced the company books. Before we did, she handed the phone back to me. From this second on, you do not speak to Mark alone. Not by phone. Not by text. Not in person. Everything goes through me. I look down at my swollen hands. What happens now? Nora's eyes were steady. Now, she said, we stop letting him control the story. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. Come home before I make this ugly. I read it. This time, I did not feel the old panic rise in my throat. I just turned the screen toward Nora. She almost smiled. Let him, she said. Men like Mark always think ugly belongs to them. By 8 in the morning, Mark had decided I was bluffing. I knew that because his messages changed. They were not apologies. They were instructions. Claire. Enough. Come home before you make this worse. You have no idea what kind of damage you're doing. I was sitting in Maya's apartment, with an ice pack pressed to my cheek, wearing one of her old UCLA sweatshirts, while my sister made coffee so strong, it could have restarted a dead battery. Nora sat across from me, at the tiny kitchen table, already working, like she had been waiting for this morning for years. Her laptop was open. Her phone was on speaker. A yellow legal pad sat beside her coffee, covered in handwriting so sharp and clean. It almost looked printed. She had not slept. Neither had I. But Nora looked focused, in a way that made exhaustion irrelevant. Do not answer him, she said, without looking up. I'm not. Good. Maya set a mug in front of me. Do I get to answer him? No. Nora said, do I get to key his car? No. Do I get to think about it? Nora paused. Privately. Maya looked at me and shrugged. I'll take it. For the first time since the night before, something inside me loosened. Not enough to feel safe. Not enough to feel okay. But enough to remember. I was still a person, not just a bruise. With a case number. Nora slid a document toward me. Emergency Protective Order. I'm filing this within the hour. I looked at the pages. My name? Mark's name. The address of the house. The words, domestic violence, printed in clean black letters. My stomach turned. Even after everything. Seeing it written that plainly made me feel like I had stepped outside my own life and found a stranger living in it. Nora noticed. You do not have to be brave about this, she said. I don't feel brave. Good. Brave is overrated. Clear is better. She tapped the document. This asks the court to keep him away from you, your workplace, and Maya's apartment. I'm also requesting temporary exclusive use of the marital home. I looked up. The house? Yes. But he'll lose his mind. He already did, Maya said from the counter. Nora continued. I'm filing a motion to freeze marital assets. He cannot drain accounts, sell property, move funds, or destroy financial records. Without consequences. He'll say I'm trying to ruin him. No, Nora said. He'll say you're unstable. Then he'll say you're greedy. Then he'll say you misunderstood. Then, when those do not work, he'll say you did it. 2. The room went quiet. She looked at me, over the top of her glasses. That is why we move first. B9, 15. The filings had gone out. B9:40. Nora's office served a preservation letter to Ellison Development. Every email, every invoice, every company phone, every accounting file, every loan document, every communication involving me, Mark, Brianna Cole, Richard Ellison, and anything labeled B. Cole Consulting. Nothing was to be deleted. Nothing was to be altered. Nothing was to be lost. B10. Mark called Nora. She did not answer. B10. He left a voicemail. Nora played it on speaker. His voice filled Maya's kitchen. Nora. This is Mark Ellison. I don't know what Claire told you, but my wife is having some kind of episode. She walked out last night, after starting a fight in my home. I want this handled quietly. Call me back, before she embarrasses herself. Maya's face went red. I stared at the table. Nora saved the voicemail. Notice the phrasing. She said, my wife. My home. Handled quietly. Good. How is that good? I asked. Because men like Mark tell you exactly how they see the world. When they think nobody in it, can stop them. Adzeche, dozechi doi. Detective Mills called Mark. I was not there for that conversation, but I heard about it later. Apparently, Mark started calm. Smooth, concerned husband voice. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He said I was emotional. He said Brianna was a family friend who had come over because he was going through a lot. Then Detective Mills asked why a family friend had been wearing my robe. Mark got less smooth after that. Then Mills asked about my split lip. Mark said I fell. Then Mills asked how I fell from inside the house onto the front porch. Mark ended the call by saying he wanted his attorney present. Nora smiled when Mills told her. Not a happy smile. A litigation smile. Meanwhile, at the house, Brianna was making the first mistake of the day. She posted a photo. My kitchen. My marble island. My blue mug. Her manicured hand wrapped around it. No face. No mark. Just enough for anyone who knew my house to know exactly where she was. The caption said, "Peace looks good on a home." Maya saw it first. She had been hate scrolling, which Nora said was not legally productive, but emotionally understandable. Claire, Maya said slowly. I looked over. She held out the phone. For 3 seconds. All I could do was stare. There it was. My mug. My kitchen. The morning after Mark hit me and locked me out. I felt something rise in my chest. That was not sadness. Not for anger. It was a clean, cold disbelief. Nora took the phone from Maya, screenshotted the post, copied the link, and sent it to herself. Thank you. Brianna, she murmured. 20 minutes later, the post disappeared. Mark must have seen it. Or he must have realized the girlfriend who made him feel powerful was too vain to survive a legal fight. But deletion did not matter. Nothing was really deleted anymore. That was the first lesson Mark learned too late. At Ellison Development, the preservation letter landed, like a grenade. Richard Ellison called Nora. At 11, 12. Unlike his son, Richard did not waste time pretending to be charming. This is an outrageous overreach, he said, loud enough that I could hear him, before Nora put him on speaker. Nora leaned back in her chair. Good morning. Mr. Ellison. Do not good morning me. This is a private marital dispute between my son and his wife. You have no authority to drag my company into it. Your company is already in it. Because Claire handled paperwork, she clearly did not understand. I felt my fingers go cold around my coffee mug. There it was. The story? Already loaded. Already waiting. Nora's eyes flicked to me. Then back to the phone. Mr. Ellison, she said. Before you continue, I'm going to remind you that this call is being documented. If you intend to accuse my client of financial misconduct, I suggest you do so through counsel. A pause. Then Richard's voice dropped. This can be settled. I'm sure it can. I mean quietly. I know what you mean. Another pause. This one longer. Richard said. What does she want? I almost answered. The old version of me would have rushed to explain. I don't want money. I don't want trouble. I just want to be safe. I just want this to stop. Nora did not look at me. She did not need to. She said, all communication goes through formal channels. From this point forward. Then she hung up. Maya whispered, that was rude. Nora said, that was a courtesy. At noon, Daniel Price arrived at Maya's apartment with a laptop bag, a paper folder, and the expression of a man who had spent the morning watching numbers confess. He sat at the kitchen table, opened his computer, and turned it toward Nora and me. I started with B. Cole Consulting, he said. My throat tightened. Brianna. Yes. Except B. Cole Consulting is not registered as a consulting company in California. No business license that I can find. No tax registration. No professional website. No deliverables. No contract with defined scope. He tapped the screen. Yet Ellison Development paid it. $78,000. Over 11 months. Maya made a sound under her breath. I did not. I kept looking at the screen. $78,000. For almost a year. Mark had told me we needed to cut back. No vacation. No new tires for my car. No replacing the dishwasher that screamed every time it ran. Cash flow was tight. Meanwhile, Brianna Cole had been collecting fake consulting payments from his family company. Daniel clicked to another spreadsheet. That does not include corporate card charges connected to travel and personal expenses. He highlighted rows in pale blue. Hotel, restaurant, spa, women's boutique, jewelry store, hotel again. Same dates as payments to B. Cole Consulting. Same dates Mark had told me. He was meeting investors, walking job sites, staying late at the office. Daniel continued. Some of these were coded as client development, some as project staging. 2 were entered under something called municipal relationship expenses, which is, he paused. Not a phrase I enjoy seeing. Nora's face sharpened. Why? Because it tends to be where people hide things they do not want auditors asking about. I thought of Richard's email. Move the Claire files off-site until the audit window passes. The room seemed to shrink around me. Daniel opened another document. This is the loan modification, with Claire's signature. I looked away instinctively. Nora noticed, but did not soften the moment. Claire, she said. Look at it. I know what it says. I know. Look anyway. We are not letting them make you afraid of your own name. So I looked. There was my name. Or something, pretending to be my name. Daniel enlarged the signature. I compared this to 12 known signatures Claire provided. There are inconsistencies. The pressure pattern is wrong. The C is wrong. The ending stroke is wrong. That will need a proper handwriting expert, but it supports what she told us. He clicked again. More importantly, the scan data shows the document was uploaded from a device registered to Ellison Development's main office at No Patruzet M on March 18. Maya leaned forward. Why does that matter? Nora answered, before Daniel could. Claire. Where were you on March 18? I knew immediately, because some dates burn themselves into you. At urgent care? I said. Maya's head turned. What? I swallowed. Mark slammed the pantry door. My wrist was in the way. The kitchen went silent. I hated that silence. I hated the way Maya's face changed. I hated that. I had not told her. Nora's voice stayed calm. Do you have records? Yes. Photos? Yes. Good. Daniel nodded. That means we can place Claire away from the office. When the document was scanned, if Mark claims she signed it there that night, we have a problem for him. A problem for him. For months. Every problem had somehow become mine. His anger became my fault. His affair became my failure. His money issues became my burden. His lies became my confusion. Now, for the first time, a problem was moving in the other direction. Atunu. Trezeci. Mark was served. The protective order hearing was scheduled quickly because of the police report, medical documentation, threat texts, and the fact that Brianna had been present. He was also served with notice of the asset freeze request. Nora's process server caught him outside Ellison Development. Again, I was not there, but the server later told Nora that Mark read the first page, laughed, and said, "She's insane." Then he read the second page. Then the part about marital assets. Then the part about company records. He stopped laughing. Bidva. 13. He texted. You think you're clever? Bidva. 14. You don't know what Richard can do. Bidva. 15. You signed things too. Claire. Remember that. I sent every message to Nora. She responded with 3 words. Do not engage. That became the rhythm of the day. Mark threatened. I forwarded. Richard postured. Nora documented. Brianna deleted. Maya screenshotted. Daniel followed the money. By late afternoon, the first real fracture appeared between Mark and Brianna. A friend of Maya's still had access to Brianna's public stories. Before Brianna locked her account, the morning glamour was gone. Now there was nothing. No posts. No captions. No kitchen. No mug. Then came a screenshot from an anonymous account that had seen Brianna's close friend's story. Before it vanished. A black screen with white text. Asterisk. Asterisk. Some men never tell you how messy their ex really is until you're already involved. Protect your peace. Ladies. Maya read it out loud and looked ready to commit a felony. Nora held out her hand. Send it to me. You're very calm. For someone who just saw that. I bill by the hour. Rage is extra. Even I smiled at that. Barely. But I smiled. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was not Mark. It was an unknown number. Asterisk. Asterisk. This is Brianna. I don't know what Mark told you, but I'm not involved in your marriage drama. Leave me out of it. I stared at the message. Leave me out of it. The woman who wore my robe, drank from my mug, collected money through fake invoices, smiled while my husband dragged me to the door. Nora read the text. Then she said, Perfect. How is everything perfect to you? Because everyone is scared. And scared people write things down. She typed a response from her own phone. Not mine. Formal. Clean. Terrifying. Mess. Coal. This office represents Claire Ellison. You are directed to preserve all communications, financial records, invoices, receipts, photographs, and electronic messages involving Mark Ellison, Richard Ellison, Ellison Development, and any payments made to you, directly or indirectly. Deletion or alteration of evidence may result in legal consequences. All further communication must be directed to this office. She sent it. Brianna did not respond. At patruzeci și cinci. Detective Mills called again. He had spoken with Mark's attorney. He had also spoken with Brianna. Briefly. She says she didn't witness the slap. He told Nora. I felt my stomach twist. She was standing right there. I said. Mills heard me. I know. She says she was in the bathroom. She wasn't. I know. He repeated. That is why I'm asking about the kitchen. The kitchen? Any cameras? Doorbell? Smart devices? Anything that may have caught audio? I froze. Then I looked at Maya. Then, at Nora. The pet camera. I said. Nora sat forward. The one from his mother? I nodded. It's near the kitchen window. Mark never took it out. Does it record? I don't know. Do you have access? I think the app is still on the tablet, in my desk. At the house? I nodded again. Nora shut her laptop. We are not going there alone. Atchaze ziche. With Detective Mills's approval, and Maya driving, I returned to my house. For the first time, since Mark had locked me out. He was not supposed to be there. The temporary order had not been granted yet, but Mills had warned him not to be present while I retrieved essentials. Mark's attorney had apparently told him the same thing in more expensive words. Still, my hands shook when we pulled into the driveway. The porch looked normal. That offended me. There should have been a mark. A stain. Some visible proof that the worst night of my marriage had happened there. But the rain had washed everything clean. Maya touched my arm. You don't have to go in. Yes. I said. I do. Inside. The house smelled like coffee and Brianna's perfume. My robe was gone from the kitchen chair. The mug was in the sink. I looked at it for half a second. Then I walked past it. Nora had given me a list. Laptop. Tablet. Passport. Medication. Text files. Hard drive. Anything with original signatures. Anything Mark could destroy. In my desk drawer. Beneath a stack of old dental office schedules, I found the tablet. Battery almost dead. I turned it on. The pet camera app was still there. My heart started pounding. As it loaded. Kitchen camera. Offline. But there was a cloud history tab. I clicked it. Yesterday. Enaicht. Enainshtirideset. M. A thumbnail appeared. Me. Standing in the kitchen doorway. Wet coat. Brianna in my robe. Mark Basil here. My breath stopped. I did not play it. I could not. I just handed the tablet to Nora. She watched the first 10 seconds. Then her face changed. Not shock. Not pity. Confirmation. She paused the video, looked at me, and said, Claire. This recorded everything. Maya covered her mouth. I sat down hard, on the edge of the bed. Everything. The robe. The argument. The slap. The push toward the door. Brianna not in the bathroom. Mark lying. Before he even knew what evidence existed. For a moment, the room tilted. Nora placed the tablet carefully into an evidence bag Detective Mills had given her. We make copies immediately, she said. I nodded, but I barely heard her. Because down the hallway, from the living room, Mark's voice suddenly exploded. What the hell are you doing? In my house? Maya jumped. Nora stood. I turned. Mark was in the entryway, face flushed, eyes wild, tie loose, like he had ripped it open, with his own hands. He was not supposed to be there. Behind him, Brianna stood near the door, pale and silent. For a second, nobody moved. Then Mark saw the tablet, in Nora's hand. His face drained. "What is that?" Nora's voice was ice. "Mr. Ellison, you need to leave. This is my house. Not for long, if you keep violating warnings. From law enforcement?" His eyes shifted to me. "You," he said. Just one word. Full of hatred. Full of panic. Full of the realization that something had slipped out of his control. He took one step forward. Maya stepped in front of me. "Try it," she said. Brianna grabbed his arm. "Mark." "Don't." He shook her off. But he did not come closer. Because he was looking at the tablet. Because for the first time, Mark understood the night before had not vanished. Just because he said, "It happened differently." It had been recorded. His hand hitting my face. His voice telling me to get out. Brianna standing there, watching. Every lie he had started building that morning had already collapsed. Sirens sounded outside. Mills had sent a patrol car. When Nora notified him, we were entering the house. The timing was not dramatic. It was procedural, which made it better. Mark looked toward the window. Then back at me. His voice dropped. "Claire, you don't want to do this." I stood up. My knees were weak. My cheeks still hurt. But my voice came out steady. "No. Mark, you don't want me to do this." Two officers stepped onto the porch. Nora walked to the door and opened it. "Officers," she said. "Mr. Ellison is present, against instruction, and we have recovered video evidence relevant to last night's assault." Mark's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Brianna backed away from him, like proximity had become contagious. That was the second lesson Mark learned too late. People who love your power usually leave when it turns into evidence. By the end of that night, the court granted the temporary protective order. Mark was ordered not to contact me, not to come near Maya's apartment, not to come to my workplace, and, pending further hearing, not to enter the marital home, without arrangement through counsel. The judge also granted a temporary asset restraint. No draining accounts, no selling property, no moving marital funds, no destroying records. The house he had thrown me out of 24 hours earlier was no longer a place he could enter freely. But I did not go back. Not that night. I stayed with Maya. I sat on her couch, under a faded quilt, while she slept in the armchair, because she refused to leave me alone. Atunci 38 p. Nora called. Her voice was tired now. For the first time all day. She sounded human. "We got the order," she said. "I know. Thank you. There's something else." The warmth that had started to gather in my chest disappeared. "What?" Daniel found another loan document. I closed my eyes. "How bad?" "Bad enough that Mark's attorneys may try to argue you had knowledge of the company's financing structure. But I didn't. I believe you." "Will the court?" "That depends." I sat up slowly. "On what?" Nora paused. Then she said, "On whether we can prove your signature was forged before they convince anyone you were part of it." The apartment was dark, except for the light above Maya's stove. Outside, the storm had finally passed. But inside my chest, something colder settled in, because I understood then that getting away from Mark was only the first fight. The second, It was proving he had not already tied my name to the wreckage he was about to leave behind. For almost a week, Mark stopped texting me. That scared me more than the threats. Because Mark was never quiet, unless someone smarter than him had told him to be. His attorney's name was Graham Voss. Nora knew him by reputation. She described him as expensive, polished, and allergic to losing. He represented men who called themselves complicated, when what they really meant was guilty with money. The first letter from his office arrived on a Tuesday morning. It did not mention Brianna. It did not mention the video. It did not mention my split lip, the bruise on my arm, or the fact that Mark had been caught inside the house after being warned to stay away. Instead, it called me emotionally unstable. It said I had misinterpreted business documents. It said I had access to Ellison development records. It said I had handled invoices, loan forms, vendor files, and internal spreadsheets. Then came the sentence that made my stomach drop. To the extent any irregularities exist, Mrs. Ellison was the individual most directly responsible for document preparation and financial administration. I read it twice, then a third time. The words looked clean and professional. That made them worse. Mark was not just denying what he did. He was building a door and trying to shove me through it. Nora watched my face from across her desk. There it is, she said. He's blaming me. He's trying to. I helped with paperwork because he asked me to. I know. What if that's enough? Nora leaned back. Enough for what? For people to believe him? She was quiet for a second. Then she said, Claire, listen carefully. Mark is counting on the fact that you still think truth is something people automatically recognize. It is not. Truth has to be organized. It has to be dated. It has to be backed up. It has to be harder to ignore than the lie. She tapped the folder in front of her. That's what we do now. The deposition was scheduled 3 days later. Officially, it was tied to the divorce, the asset freeze, and the disputed financial documents. But everyone in that room understood. The floor was shifting. This was no longer only about a husband, a mistress, and a slap in a kitchen. This was about money. And men like Mark were much more afraid of paper than tears. The conference room was on the 34th floor of a downtown office building, with a long glass table, expensive chairs, and a view of Los Angeles, so bright it almost felt cruel. Mark sat across from me, in a navy suit. He looked tired. Not destroyed. Not yet. But the Golden Boy act was starting to crack. There were shadows under his eyes. His jaw was tight. His left hand kept opening and closing around a pen. Richard Ellison sat beside him, still straight-backed, still proud, still looking at me like I was an employee who had forgotten her place. Brianna was not there, but her name was. That mattered more. Graham Voss began with a performance. He spoke gently, too gently. Mrs. Ellison, he said, you assisted with administrative work for Ellison Development during your marriage, correct? Yes. You organized invoices? Yes. You had access to company records? Limited access. You prepared spreadsheets? Yes. You handled vendor folders? I organized documents. Mark brought home. He nodded, as if I had confessed to something. And you were familiar with loan paperwork? Nora's pen stopped moving. I felt her attention sharpen beside me. I was familiar with formatting. I said, not the financing decisions. But you understood what a loan modification was. In general? And you signed documents? For your husband's company? No. Graham looked up. No? I signed tax returns. We reviewed together. I signed marital documents. I understood. I did not sign company loans. He slid a paper forward. Is this your signature? My throat tightened. There it was again. My name. The fake C. The wrong ending stroke. The version of me Mark had tried to manufacture. No. I said. Graham tilted his head. It is your position. That someone forged your signature? It is the truth. Mark let out a small breath, almost a laugh. Nora looked at him. Counsel your client. Graham put a hand lightly on Mark's arm. Mrs. Ellison, he continued. Is it possible that you signed this document and later forgot? No. Is it possible you signed a stack of papers your husband placed in front of you without reading every page? No. Never? I looked at Mark. He was watching me with that familiar expression, the one that said, be careful. For years. That look had worked. It had made me soften sentences, swallow objections, trade truth for peace. But there was no peace left to buy. No? I said again. Not that document. Graham turned a page. Let's talk about March 18. Nora's voice cut in. Please do. That was when the room changed. Graham glanced at her. And for the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Nora opened her own folder. Before we continue, she said, let's mark this as Exhibit 7. She slid copies across the table. Urgent care records. Time-stamped. March 18. OSEM. Sidamin Pedisitpe. M. My name. Wrist contusion. Patient reported injury. From household door. Maya listed as emergency contact. Nora added the second page. A photograph of my wrist. Purple and swollen. Then she added a third. The scan data from the loan document. Uploaded from Ellison Development's main office. March 18. Devet. 3:40. M. The room went still. Nora looked at Graham. Your client's position is that Mrs. Ellison signed this document. That night, Graham did not answer immediately. Richard shifted in his chair. Mark stared at the papers. Nora continued. Because if so, we would like an explanation for how she signed it at the company office while receiving medical treatment across town. Mark's pen stopped moving. Graham's jaw tightened. Metadata can be interpreted in different ways. Excellent. Nora said. Then we will also mark Exhibit 8. A still image from the office security camera. Mark entering Ellison Development. After hours. March 18. Devitt. En interdicit P. M. Brianna beside him. Wearing a white coat. Laughing. My lungs forgot how to work. For a second. I had known about the metadata. I had not seen the camera image. Mark leaned toward Graham and whispered something. Nora did not pause. Exhibit 9. A message from Brianna. To Mark. Sent at D. M. That same night. Did you use her signature again? Again. One word. 4 letters. Enough to make Richard Ellison close his eyes. Enough to make Mark's face go pale. Enough to make the entire room understand that March 18 was not an accident. Graham's voice lost some of its softness. Where did you obtain this? Nora looked at him as if he had asked where rain came from. Discovery. Nora said. That was not the whole answer. The truth was, Brianna had been subpoenaed 2 days earlier. And Brianna, when faced with the possibility of being dragged into fraud charges for a man who could no longer fund her lifestyle, had discovered a sudden passion for honesty. Not complete honesty, not moral honesty, self-preserving honesty. But Nora had warned me not to be picky about why rats left sinking ships. Only that they did. Brianna's attorney had produced messages. Not all of them. Enough. Enough to show that Brianna knew. Mark used my name. Enough to show she had accepted payments through fake invoices. Enough to show Mark had told her more than once that I was too obedient to question anything. Then Nora marked Exhibit 10. An audio voicemail. Mark's voice filled the conference room. Low. Controlled. Ugly. You sign what I tell you to sign. Claire. That's how marriage works. You don't get to enjoy the life I built and then ask where the bricks came from. My hands went cold. I remembered that voicemail. I remembered standing in the laundry room while it played the first time, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I had almost deleted it. I had been ashamed of it. Ashamed that someone could speak to me that way and still find me home. When he returned, now it played through a polished speaker in a room full of lawyers. And nobody could pretend it was love. Mark stared at the table. Richard looked at him, not as a father anymore, but as a man realizing his son had left fingerprints on the weapon. Nora did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Exhibit 11. The notary stamp. Daniel Price had found it. While tracing the loan files, the same notary seal appeared on multiple documents, supposedly signed on different dates, in different locations, under circumstances that did not match the notary's own log. One of those signatures was mine. 2 belonged to investors. 1 belonged to a vendor who had died 6 months before the date on the page. That was the moment even Graham Voss stopped performing. He asked for a break. Nora said, "Of course." Mark stood so fast. His chair hit the wall behind him. Richard followed him out, through the glass wall. I could see them, in the hallway. Mark talking with his hands. Richard's face turning darker, with every word. Graham standing between them, no longer gentle. Nora leaned toward me. "Breathe." I realized I had been holding my breath. I didn't know about the vendor. I whispered, "I know. There's more than Mark." "Yes." Richard knew. Nora's expression did not change. Richard knew enough. I looked through the glass, at the man who had once told me I should be grateful that Mark had chosen a woman with no real family money, because it proved he loved me for myself. He had smiled when he said it, like humiliation was advice. Now he looked old, not weak, exposed. When the deposition resumed, Graham's strategy had changed. He no longer suggested I was unstable. He no longer pressed the idea that I had simply forgotten signing documents. He asked narrow questions, careful questions, questions designed to stop the bleeding. Then Nora asked Mark one question. "Mr. Ellison, did you ever instruct anyone to sign, copy, trace, scan, alter, or use Claire Ellison's signature on any financial document?" "No." His answer came too quickly. Nora placed one final document on the table, an email from Richard to Mark. Subject line, audit prep. The body read, asterisk, asterisk, move the Claire files off-site until the audit window passes. And tell Brian to stop texting about signatures. She's a liability. I watched Mark read it. Then I watched him understand that his father had written the sentence that would drag them both under. For the first time, Mark looked at me, without anger. Only fear. Pure, stripped-down fear. As if the woman he had shoved into the rain had walked back into the room, carrying every consequence he thought he had buried. Graham ended the deposition early. He called it a procedural issue. Nora called it panique. Outside the building, the first news van was already parked near the curb. "Not for us," Not technically. A city contracts reporter had been digging into Ellison development for months, Nora told me. Daniel's findings had simply given the right people the right trail. Still, when Mark saw the camera, he froze. Brianna was on the sidewalk, half a block away, with her attorney, sunglasses covering half her face, looking nothing like the woman who had smiled in my kitchen. Mark saw her. She saw him. For a second, they stared at each other, like two criminals realizing there was only one life jacket. Then Brianna turned away first. Mark looked at me. Claire, he said. Nora stepped slightly in front of me. All communication through counsel. But Mark ignored her. His voice cracked. Please. We can fix this. Tell them you misunderstood. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I had misunderstood. For years, I had misunderstood cruelty as stress, control as concert, silence as patience, fear as marriage. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something inside me detach completely. I misunderstood for 6 years. I said, I'm done doing that. His face twisted. You're going to destroy everything. No, I said. I'm going to stop letting you use my life as a place to hide. A microphone lifted. In the distance, someone called Mark's name. Richard grabbed his son by the sleeve and pulled him toward a waiting black SUV. Brianna got into a separate car. Nobody waited for anybody else. That was how empires like theirs ended. Not with loyalty, with separate attorneys and locked doors. By sunset, the story had started moving. Not the whole story. Not yet. But enough. Local developer facing questions. Overforged loan documents. City permit relationships. Under review. Sources allege misuse of investor funds. B. Cole Consulting. Named in subpoena. Mark's name was there. Richard's name was there. Brianna's name was there. Mine was not. Nora had made sure of that. That night, I sat on Maya's balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights blink on. Onebiwan. My phone was silent. For once, Mark could not reach me. Nora called at 8:18. The state attorney's office has requested copies of the original documents. She said. I closed my eyes. So it's criminal now? It's moving that way. I thought that would make me feel victorious. It didn't. It made me tired. It made me sad. For the woman I had been, the one who had once sat at a dining table, organizing invoices, because she thought she was building a future with her husband. Nora's voice softened. You did the right thing, Claire. I know. But knowing did not make it painless. Across the street, a woman walked her dog, under the yellow glow of a street lamp. A bus sahil to a stop, at the corner. Somewhere below, people were driving home, ordering dinner, calling their kids in from the yard. Ordinary life. The thing I had wanted for so long. The thing Mark had made feel impossible. I looked down at my hands. They were still bruised. But they were steady. That was when I understood the real twist. Mark had spent years making me feel small, so I would never notice how much I was holding. His secrets, his paperwork, his lies, his timeline, his evidence. He thought I was the weak link. He never realized I was the record. After the deposition, Ellison Development did not collapse all at once. That would have been too clean. It came apart, the way rotten wood comes apart, under pressure. First, one investor asked for clarification. Then 3 more. Then a lender paused, a scheduled draw, on one of the company's renovation projects, citing documentation concerns. Then a city official, who used to return Richard Ellison's calls, within the hour, suddenly became unavailable. Then an internal accountant resigned. Then 2 vendors filed notices for unpaid balances. By the end of the second week, people who had once smiled beside Mark at charity breakfasts were crossing hotel lobbies to avoid him. That was the part no one in his world ever wanted to admit. Power could look solid for years. Then, the moment people realized it was safer to stand somewhere else, it became very lonely, very fast. Nora kept me updated, only on what affected me. She knew I did not need every ugly detail. The divorce was still moving. The protective order was extended. The asset freeze stayed in place. Daniel's report made it harder and harder for Mark's lawyers to pretend I had been part of anything except the cover story they had tried to write around me. The forged loan documents became the center of everything. Not because they were the only bad documents, because they were the easiest to explain. My signature. Not my signature, my medical record, proving I was somewhere else. The office camera, showing Mark and Brianna. The message from Brianna. The email from Richard. Sometimes the truth does not need to be loud. Sometimes it just needs to be arranged in the right order. Mark tried to settle. Not apologize. Settle. There was a difference. His first offer came through Graham Voss on a Friday afternoon. I could keep my car. I could take a modest cash payment. In return, I would agree to withdraw certain claims, stop cooperating beyond what was legally required, and sign a confidentiality agreement. So thick, Nora said, it could qualify as furniture. She read the offer, laughed once, and dropped it on her desk. No. I looked at the stack of papers. That easy? That easy. He'll be furious. Claire, she said, his emotions are no longer instructions. I repeated that sentence to myself for days. His emotions are no longer instructions. When you live too long with someone volatile, you start organizing your life around their weather. You check the air before you speak. You measure footsteps. You learn which silence means tired and which silence means incoming. I had mistaken that skill for love. It was not love. It was survival. Brianna lasted exactly 18 days before she turned fully on Mark. Nora told me carefully, because she knew the name still landed somewhere tender. Brianna had given a sworn statement. She admitted B. Cole Consulting had never provided real consulting services. She admitted Mark told her how to invoice the company. She admitted he used corporate funds for trips, clothing, jewelry, and hotel rooms. She admitted he joked that I was too busy playing loyal wife to notice what was happening. The only thing she did not admit was cruelty. People like Brianna rarely do. They confess to facts when the facts corner them. But they protect the story they tell themselves. In her version, she had been misled, pressured, caught up in Mark's promises. Maybe some people believed her. I did not need to. A month after the deposition, Brianna deleted her old social media accounts. Before they disappeared, Maya showed me one final post someone had saved. A blurry photo of Brianna at a promotional event outside a nightclub in the valley, holding a tray of cheap champagne samples, smiling too hard under bad lighting. Maya looked at me, waiting for satisfaction. I felt almost nothing. That surprised me. For months, I had thought seeing Brianna fall would feel like justice, but by then, she looked less like a rival and more like what she had always been. Another person who thought proximity to Mark's power was the same thing as having her own. She had worn my robe. She had smiled while I bled. I would never forget that. but I no longer needed to carry her around with me. Richard Ellison resigned first. He called it a temporary step back for health reasons. The local business paper called it a leadership transition. Nora called it running before the subpoena gets teeth. Mark was removed from his position. A week later, not publicly fired, placed on leave, then extended leave, then quietly erased from the company website. His professional biography disappeared before his wedding ring did. The criminal investigation moved slower. That was fine. I had spent years being rushed, be Marksinger. I no longer needed justice to arrive breathless. The divorce hearing came on a clear morning in January. No rain, no thunder, no cinematic storm outside the courthouse. Just cold air, pale sunlight, and people walking through metal detectors with coffee cups and tired faces. Maya drove me. She wore a navy blazer, she said made her look like an emotionally supportive accountant. Nora met us at the courthouse steps, with a folder under one arm and 2 coffees in her hands. You ready? She asked. No. I said, good enough. Inside the courtroom, Mark sat at the opposite table. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Exactly. He was still tall, still well-dressed, still capable of arranging his face into something close to charm, but the room no longer bent toward him. That was the difference. Nobody rushed to soothe him. Nobody laughed too quickly at things he said. Nobody looked at me like I was the difficult one. His mother sat behind him, stiff and pale, clutching a tissue she never used. Richard was not there. Brianna was not there. The crowd Mark had once performed for had vanished. When he looked at me, I did not look away. Not because I wanted to challenge him, because I did not have to shrink anymore. The hearing itself was less dramatic than people imagine. No screaming. No shocking confession. No judge slamming a gavel, like a movie. Just documents. Terms. Dates. Orders. The forged loans were excluded from my liability, pending the ongoing investigation. The court recognized the dissipation of marital assets. The protective order was made long-term. The house would be sold, with my legal interests protected. I would not be bound by any confidentiality clause, preventing cooperation with investigators. And then, after all the papers, and all the months, and all the years that had led to that room, the judge said, the marriage was dissolved. That was the sentence. Not poetic, not gentle, not cruel, just final. The marriage was dissolved. I thought I would cry. I did not. I sat very still, while Nora closed her folder. Maya squeezed my shoulder from behind. Mark leaned toward Graham and whispered something. Graham shook his head. Then Mark stood. For 1 second, I thought he would try to walk toward me. He did not. Maybe he remembered the order. Maybe he remembered the officers near the door. Maybe he finally understood that wanting access to me did not mean he was entitled to it. Graham approached Nora instead. They spoke quietly. Then Nora turned to me. He wants me to tell you. He's sorry. I looked past her, at Mark. His face was tense, expectant, almost boyish, in the worst way. Like apology was another key he could try in the lock. I turned back to Nora. No response. She nodded once. That was all. No speech. No final wound. No last performance. For a man who had taken enough of my life already. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like exhaust, coffee, and cold concrete. Maya handed me the second coffee Nora had brought. It had gone lukewarm. I drank it anyway. How do you feel? Maya asked. For a while, I watched people move up and down the courthouse steps. A woman in heels, arguing into a phone. A man holding a folder to his chest, like it might save him. A young mother, tying her child's shoe, near the railing. Life kept moving, indifferent, and somehow beautiful. Finally, I said, quiet. Maya looked at me. Is that good? I thought about it. Yes. I said, I think it is. A week later, I went back to the house. Not alone. Maya came with me. So did a locksmith. Not because I planned to stay. Because I wanted my things. And I wanted the locks changed. Before the realtor came, the house looked almost the same. That bothered me less than I expected. The kitchen was clean. The marble island shone. The morning light came through the windows, in soft, ordinary stripes. For a second, I could see all the versions of myself who had stood there. The woman making coffee before work. The woman checking invoices at midnight. The woman pretending not to notice perfume on her husband's shirt. The woman on the floor with blood on her lip. The woman reaching for her phone in the rain. I opened the cabinet. The blue mug was still there. Clean. Centered. Waiting. Like nothing had happened. Maya saw me looking at it. You want me to break it? She asked. I smiled. No. I took it down. Held it for a moment. Then I placed it gently into the cardboard box marked donation. Maya raised an eyebrow. That's mature. Don't get used to it. She laughed. And this time, I did too. We packed slowly. Not everything. Just what was mine. A stack of books. My mother's recipe cards. A framed photo of Maya and me at the beach when we were kids. A winter coat I had forgotten I owned. The rest could be sold, argued over, appraised, boxed by strangers. I had spent too many years taking care of that house, like care could make it love me back. Before leaving, I walked to the front door. The porch boards had dried long ago. There was no trace of the rain, no outline of my knees, no proof of the woman who had been left there. But I did not need the porch to remember. I had the record. More importantly, I had myself. The locksmith handed me the new key. It felt small in my palm, almost weightless. Mark had once stood in that doorway and told me to stay outside until I remembered who paid for the house. In the end, the court answered him better than I ever could. Power was not ownership. Marriage was not permission. And a locked door was not the same thing as control. I stepped outside. Maya carried the last box to the car. The realtor was coming in 20 minutes. The house would be photographed, listed, sold. Someone else would paint the walls, complain about the dishwasher, and drink coffee in that kitchen without knowing anything about us. That felt right. Not every haunted place needs to be burned down. Some just need new owners. I pulled the door closed behind me. Then I locked it. For a moment, I stood there, with the new key in my hand and the sun on my face. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. I deleted the notification, without opening it. Maya started the car. You coming? I looked once, at the house. Then I walked away. Some people think leaving means losing. But sometimes leaving is the first honest thing your life has done in years. Mark thought the worst thing he ever did was throw me out. He never understood. That was the night he finally let me go.